Okay, so hi everybody. My name's Jeremy Solly. I'm a technical pre-sales consultant for Merged by Merative. I'm here with John Halley, who's the global product leader for VNA and cloud platforms at Merged by Merative. And we're here to talk a little bit around the history of VNA and just discuss what that means. So we'll invite you to join us for a short conversation for your education and background. So, John, the obvious question: what is a VNA?
Great. Thank you very much, Jeremy. So VNA stands for Vendor Neutral Archive. And what that means is it is a medical imaging repository for all sorts of DICOM as well as non-DICOM images that are stored across multiple PACS systems. And PACS stands for Picture Archiving and Communication Systems. Really, where the history of the VNA was born was the early 2000s, after PACS had really started in the early 90s as far as the digital revolution of medical imaging. And what people really saw the need around PACS was, you had a lot of technology lock-in, both from a storage side of things with one PACS system only uses this type of storage versus another PACS system, as well as the need to move between PACS systems. So every 3, 5, 7 years, people are looking at the changes in technology, different vendors, new features, all the clinical workflows that a radiologist would need to use in their day-to-day. And the migrations of that data became quite an issue as far as moving between either a radiology PACS system or a cardiology PACS system. So where the vendor neutral archive really started was, being that heterogeneous PACS environment where you may have different PACS vendors for radiology versus cardiology, storing to a long-term archive as a VNA, where you could have all of the data, stored in whatever type of storage you would like to use, whatever type of server, classes and platforms you would like to use. And that way, underpinning these PACS systems, you're creating that longitudinal record for what started as, DICOM imaging between your radiology PACS, your cardiology PACS. And then as you look to move to different PACS vendors and systems, not having to migrate all of those terabytes of data, and now in this day and age, petabytes of data of that medical imaging keeps you very liquid as far as being able to move between technologies, but not having the large uplift of the infrastructure and the vendor lock-in as far as data being very sticky.
I think that's where people won't necessarily see the benefit of a dedicated VNA versus the archive that comes within a PACS system. To elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the big things around a VNA is it is vendor neutral. So it is the cornerstone of being standards-based interoperability. There are a lot of sins of PACS, I like to call it, where while everyone does DICOM, there are a lot of different ways to do DICOM that are both compliant and non-compliant. A lot of proprietary things such as proprietarily storing reports or annotations, or different ways to create studies that are linked together that are not done in a DICOM compliant way. So the VNA as a cornerstone being vendor neutral really stresses the data is gold, and making sure that bringing that data in, making it standards based so that it can be exchanged more easily both within a trust as well as across multiple trusts. So that your data becomes more liquid as well as more meaningful. The other thing with that, with the sins of PACS and DICOM, it's being able to morph that data. So the VNA also came out of its foundation of being able to tag morph things. So whether that is to make data more meaningful, such as this institution name for a particular trust or clinic, making that very uniform, making study descriptions very uniform as far as things like hanging protocols, where those come into real play for a radiologist workflow, as well as looking at things like morphing data that is non-compliant. So things like tags that are missing that the DICOM standard says you should have, as well as making things meaningful as far as looking at multiple patient identities with different medical record numbers and things of that sort. So as far as the data itself, that is key, but also orchestrating that data across the enterprise. So being able to do elaborate routing rules and prefetching rules. So being able to say, at certain times of the day, you want to send things off to a teleradiology site where you can't keep up with your reads at night, or maybe don't have radiologists on staff to do so. Things like prefetching, where I want to prefetch things for my radiology packs, but I don't want to prefetch things that are cardiology to my radiologists. So being able to tag and prefetch those in a meaningful way so that the right studies are getting to the right radiologists at the right time, and doing this at scale. So the other big thing with the VNA is being able to not only store all this data at scale, but also orchestrate this data and get it to the right place at scale. So speed is very key to being a true vendor neutral archive, where you're able to do all sorts of routing and prefetching and ingestion across a whole enterprise with multiple millions of annual study volume, whether that's looking at a particular large trust or a group of trusts in an imaging network. Being able to be that back-end enterprise platform, not only for radiology, cardiology, but as VNA has evolved to all these different service lines. You think of anything with a pixel is really where it should be stored in the VNA and not in the EPR, where things such as pictures from your phone for wound care, or surgical videos, whether those be scope videos or surgical displays, as far as looking at the theater of the surgery from all the different angles. There's a lot of different metadata and pixel data out there that may not be DICOM in its native format, but getting that so that it's normalized and stored within the longitudinal record is really key when you think of trying to create that longitudinal patient record, and looking at all the different service lines that a trust may have in an acute setting, and bringing that all together so that not only it's stored over its life cycle, maybe you want to delete things after 20 years, maybe you don't, but making sure that you manage that throughout, as well as integrating deeply with the EPR as far as making things aware so that you can know that certain studies exist, so that the EPR can launch and view those images, so that reports can come in through the EPR and be stored with the actual images, transforming those from a PDF report or HL7 text into a DICOM structured report is another really key part of making sure that that data is all together, and then also making so that when you exchange that data with other trusts and so forth, that you get the full picture of that patient. And I think that is what is really impactful as far as what is a true VNA. And as far as where we're going in the future and where we're at today, I think we can come back and have another educational session on the transformation of the VNA into enterprise imaging and into cloud in another session.
Absolutely, focusing on information interchange with other organizations and, of course, the cybersecurity side of things, which I think is going to be more and more interesting for people. So, yeah, thanks for that, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you.